Good afternoon and welcome to our latest Leegality webinar, the 5 pillars of compliant digital stamping. As more folks join in, I'll just lay down a few ground rules. We will take questions at the end in an open question and answer session where you can raise your hand and we'll give you mic access. But if you have any questions before that, please do drop them in the question and answer box below. Usually we take up more than half the questions during the flow of the webinar itself if you drop them in the Q&A box. And second, we will be sending a recording of this webinar by end of day on Monday. So you will receive a recording on the email that you used to register for this webinar. I'm Aditya, Head of Marketing at Leegality, and I'm joined today by Shubhesh, who leads our product marketing efforts. Shubhesh will be showing you how digital stamping works in our product later on in the webinar. So before we start, here's the agenda. It's very simple. In the first 25 minutes or so, I will be diving into the 5 pillars of e-stamping at scale, taking you through the first principles involved, some common mistakes we see, and giving you a deep systems level understanding of these 5 pillars. At the end of this section, you'll also get clear operational guidance on how to actually solve for each pillar in the form of an actionable checklist. Then after that, Shubhesh will show you a quick 10-minute live demo of how e-stamping works via Leegality. And after that, we'll do an open question and answer session. Again, reiterating 2 things actually. One is if you had attended our webinar back in November, we had done a webinar on the 4 or 5 mistakes of e-stamping. The content of this webinar is quite similar to that. So you may see a lot of repetition if you attended that webinar. Fortunately, most of you had not attended that one. So this will be new content for you. And of course, if you have any questions, please drop them in the Q&A box, or you can wait in about 30-35 minutes. We'll be throwing open the floor where you can raise your hand and ask your question. Before we dive in, a 2-minute introduction to Leegality, who we are and what makes us qualified to talk about stamping. So we run Bharat Stamp, India's largest private digital stamping network. Over 500 large Indian businesses have affixed more than 21 million stamps across 31 states and union territories via Leegality in the last 8 years. This is a mix of our in-house stamping solution, our partnership with NeSL, as well as our in-house digital revenue stamping system. Some of India's largest companies run eStamp via Leegality at industrial scale on a daily basis. So, we think that this gives us a good insight into how stamping works in reality and how to build an at-scale stamping system for various use cases. I assume you are all here because you also have a deep operational interest in ensuring digital stamping for your respective organizations. So there's a poll on screen. We want to understand how you're doing stamping right now. Just to get an idea of, are you here because you want to switch from physical to digital? Are you here because you do have digital but are facing some problems or want to see if your digital process is working the best way possible? Just do answer the poll. Answers are, of course, anonymized. Great. I see most of you, it's neck and neck between physical stamping and e-stamping. Interesting. And a few mentioned NeSL. I think e-stamping is just edging it. Cool. Great. Then you will know that ultimately without digital stamping, it's impossible to go paperless for any agreement, right? Loan agreements, business correspondent agreements, DDPS, and other key use cases. Unfortunately, while e-stamping and digital stamping exists, there's a lot that can break stamping. If we can go to the next slide, please. For example, there are rampant instances of fraud, which you can't do anything about because it's downstream at your vendor level. And there are instances where e-stamping can completely break, right? Which leaves your customers unhappy and you without any real options when that actually happens. So in this webinar, we are going to give you 5 key pillars that you need to solve for to prevent the above 2 consequences, right? So that they just do not happen or their chances are slashed greatly, right? So pillar 1 is compliance with stamping law. Pillar 2 is offering a consistent, stable uptime. Pillar 3 is for those of you using NeSL, ensuring you have a stopgap in certain states where NeSL is not present yet. Pillar 4 is minimizing stamp wastage. And pillar 5, which may not be applicable for many of you, is ensuring that for use cases where you need revenue stamps, you have digital revenue stamping as well. So I'll be covering each one, going deep into each one, as well as giving you operational guidance on each one. So let's start with pillar one. Pillar one will be the longest segment of the webinar, probably the most important segment, right? Compliance with Indian stamping laws and the IT Act. So right now, many organizations, and there's a conventional wisdom that stamping now, e-stamping is a largely solved technical problem, right? Like you have a physical stamping process, you purchase or consume a digital stamping API, and boom, like your stamp process is automatically digital, right? This is just not true, right? Because this results in a flow, and but it seems true, right? Because when you see a demo of this flow, you see a flow that where a lot of eStamp APIs, you'll see the flow where you toggle on stamping, you put party names, and on the fly, digital stamps get affixed on agreements generated on the fly. Unfortunately, just this is not enough, right? Because stamping is not first and foremost a technical process. Like you need technology to do it, but at its core, digital stamping is still a legal process, right? With very specific legal requirements under Indian law, and technology cannot override these legal requirements. So there are 5 legal requirements under law. One, we've given it here, legally compliant defacement of the stamp paper before it is digitized. Two, first party name should appear on the physical and digital stamp paper. Three, a clear indication that the stamp paper being used is being used for a specific document. We don't just mean that, okay, this stamp is just used for this type of document. It means that this specific stamp paper that's here is used for this specific loan agreement. 4, stamp papers must be received from government authorized stamp vendors, and the actual stamp paper must be used, not a vendor generated receipt. And 5, of course, this is under the IT Act. The digital version of the stamp paper that you see must be identical to the corresponding physical copy. This is kind of linked to the first requirement here. They both ensure the same thing. So many e-stamping implementations seem to work well operationally, but they make one of 3 critical compliance mistakes. Let's go through these one by one, something to watch out for. First one is where the digital stamping solution generates their own receipt instead of an actual stamp paper, which feels smooth operationally because that receipt is created on the fly. But it's problematic for 2 reasons, right? One, the stamp receipt actually affixed on the document is not an actual stamp paper that's recognized by the government. And 2, even if later an actual stamp paper comes, the digital agreement has the receipt, whereas you have the physical stamp paper with you later, right? So there is a discrepancy between the digital version of the agreement and the physical version of the agreement, which violates the IT Act requirement. 2, and this is a second violation that we've seen, thankfully not very common, but we've seen it. So just wanted to flag it to you for you to watch out, is where the stamping provider does not make a receipt, but instead tries to create something that looks exactly like a stamp paper, even if it isn't the stamp paper. So we were once signing an agreement a few years back with a company that wanted to switch over to Leegality stamping. They use their existing vendor to execute that MSA, right? Because they had not switched over to us yet. So on the face of it, this stamp here looks clean, right? Like it looks like a stamp paper. There's a valid state government. There's the actual state emblem, like the Indian state emblem on it. So like looks good to go. We did some digging on this and we went to the SHCIL website, right? SHCIL provides a way to actually verify stamps online, right? Because they are the primary issuer of stamps in certain states. They certainly were in this case. The one on the right is what we got from the SHCIL website, the actual stamp paper. The one on the left is what we got from that stamping provider. Once you see them side by side, you realize many differences. One, the title is different. The emblem is actually not there in the SHCIL version. The stamping provider has inserted the emblem. 2, the stamping provider has put a new field, purpose of document, which is not there in the original stamp where it just says property description. 3, the second party in the actual stamp is a generic title, which by the way is legally valid. There's no issue with that. The issue is that in the lookalike stamp paper, they've actually affixed a different second party name. They've put the actual name, right? So the issue is not the title of the second party, it's the discrepancy. Essentially, what the stamp provider has done is purchased a correct stamp from SHCIL. So they've actually purchased a stamp paper, but they've created their own version to affix on the digital agreement. I don't know for what reason, for user experience or just for the product to feel good. I don't know what. But one, this is like violative on two counts, right? One, this is a discrepancy because, as we said, the digital must correspond to the actual stamp paper. And two, this is illegal, right? Private unauthorized entities cannot create or fabricate their own visual image, like their own style of stamp paper, even if they wish to, even if they have a vision that this is how stamp paper should. You just cannot do it. Again, we don't think this is a very common practice, but it's a serious crime and it has happened before. So definitely check for this with your stamp vendor. It's unlikely to be the case, but we've seen it happen, so do check. That's the second compliance violation. The third violation, so we also saw some hands raised during this. So we will do open Q&A in about 20 minutes. Otherwise, you can drop your question in the Q&A box below. The third violation, which we've seen, which seems the least problematic, but still has a violation which creates a compliance issue, is where the provider digitally defaces the stamp paper. So the digital version will have a legend on it, but the physical stamp paper won't actually have the legend on it. So what they do is they procure the stamp paper, they scan it, and then they affix the legend digitally, right? So like here, they've shown the digital version of the actual stamp. Defacement has happened digitally. This is actually a violation of the IT Act requirement that the physical stamp paper and the digital stamp paper must be identical and that the physical stamp paper must be defaced, right? Violation of both requirements. The Stamping Act requirement of defacement and the IT Act requirement of identicalness of the digital specimen and the physical specimen, right? This is why the legend cannot be affixed digitally. It must be affixed on the physical stamp paper to ensure that the two are identical. So that's the compliance issue, the compliance pillar. We've consolidated the compliance pillar into a checklist of 5 things you need to ensure to do a compliance check on your stamping processes. If you compare the stamping methods I've just talked about to these 5 legal requirements, you find that they violate 4 or 5 of them. Right? We'll share a clean version of this checklist with you at the end as well, so you can run your own evaluation. And of course, for the few of you who use NeSL exclusively, you don't really need to bother with this list because if you're using NeSL, NeSL is a fully valid and legal provider, so you can ignore this compliance checklist. Now let's come to pillar 2, ensuring and offering a consistent uptime, especially at month end. Before that, there's something in chat. No, there's not a question. I was just checking if there's a question. Let's come to pillar 2, ensuring uptime, right? So a lot of people who face this problem will not know they actually have a stamping roadblock, right? Because like we often talk to companies, they say we have a digital stamping process. It's successful. It's live already. Yet when we poke them further, they admit that they face significant downtime and outage, especially during month end when they actually need stamping the most. Which, if you think about it, is a contradiction, right? They say that, hey, we have a stamping process that works, yet they face outage during the busiest time of the month, right? It's a contradiction because think about any other tech process. Would you accept this level of downtime for such a critical compliance tech process? For example, let's say you had a payments process and it was down 1/6 or 1/5 of the time, right? 3 to 4 days a month. Or it's severely facing like patchy connection 1/5 of the month. Would you really consider that a viable payments process? Would you say that, hey, I have a successful payments gateway integration running? You really wouldn't say it. You'd probably chuck your payments gateway provider then and there, right? Yet we often hear this with stamping because people just assume that, hey, this is digital stamping. This is just how it works. You can't have everything. Actually, you can have everything. It doesn't actually have to be this way. You should aim and you can get near 100% uptime with digital stamping because, as we mentioned, it is a critical compliance process for which you cannot accept any downtime. I think there's some slight issue with audio. Let me just, should be fine now. So I'll just repeat. Uptime stamping going down for 3 to 4 times in the month is not something you need to accept in your stamping process. You wouldn't accept it with any other tech process. You don't need to accept it with the stamping process as well. It's not a given. It's not something you should take for granted. It's something that you should definitely seek to eliminate from your stamping process. That kind of downtime we showed you on the previous slide. So that's two down, three more to go. We are done with the two biggest pillars. The third roadblock is for lenders, that for the people who voted NeSL. It's a very short one actually, right? Because NeSL offers on-the-fly digital stamping in real time in pretty much every state in India. So there's actually really no issue. And this webinar, honestly, if you're exclusively using NeSL, is not really relevant for you as well. But however, while NeSL is there in most states, it's not there in three states, right? Although it's probably going to happen, like three states will be covered in the near future. But many lenders, when we work on NeSL implementation, say that, look, I will operate in these, like I operate in these three states also. So I'll just wait for NeSL to go live there before doing a full digital stamping implementation. As a result, they say no and postpone their NeSL implementation. It doesn't have to be this way. What we are recommending for many lenders is use NeSL across all your key states that NeSL is available in, and use an in-house stamping system like Legality's in-house stamping system as backup for the states where NeSL is not present, right? So when NeSL goes live in these states, we will of course notify and switch you over, but do not delay your eStamp implementation simply because NeSL is not present in two or three states. And in that too, that is also a matter of time, right? You can do a mix of in-house and NeSL and then switch over fully to NeSL if you want when they go live in these states. So that's reason number three, like pillar number three. What's pillar number four? A big operational hurdle, which is essentially something that increases costs, stamp wastage. So what do we mean by this? So in any digital flow, no matter how hard you try, there are going to be some drop-offs, right? Like they can be innocuous. Like you send the signer an e-sign link, they lose it in their SMS inbox, the link expires, and then you resend the link. Or like they open the document, they see it, they get a phone call, they get on the phone call, they forget about the link, they see it 2 days later, or the link just expires, right? So it's very common in digital flows for a second transaction to happen in the normal course of things, even if everything works well, right? In some stamping systems, what happens is you lose the stamp paper that's generated when they open the document, right? The stamp is actually consumed upon generation. So even if the signer drops off, even for an innocuous reason, you still spend on the stamp paper. So what you should do is, when building a system, try to ensure that if the signer drops off before signing, the stamp is not consumed, it gets put back in your inventory, right? It's a very simple thing to evaluate. Just check what happens when the signer drops off before signing. Two caveats here. If you're using NeSL, this will not be possible. Like NeSL, the stamp goes away as soon as it is generated. And two, it won't be possible where a signer has signed the document. So these are two caveats in which you cannot have a system like this. And now the final pillar before we get into the demo, quite niche, applicable only to a few use cases, but still important because many people don't realize this can be done, right? Which is revenue stamping, right? Um, so if you use DPNs, for example, right? DPNs or debt acknowledgement letters for your lending, or any other document, like we are aware of debt acknowledgement letters as DPNs is the most common, but any document where you have revenue stamp being affixed. Till very recently, for such flows, lenders had to essentially make their flow go physical for that leg because they had to physically put a DPN. Right? Recently, we spoke to a leading bank in India who was getting debt acknowledgement letters signed. They said they were doing that physically. We asked them, like, why is this physical? And they told us, look, our loan agreements are fast moving digital, right? Like to an e-sign based flow, but our DALs are still physical. There's a small poll here in case you're doing DPNs and DALs. Just wanted to see for how many of you this section will be relevant. A good number of you executing DPNs and DALs, a good number of you executing both, few of you not sure. Do check. This section will be relevant for you. If you check and you find out you have, this section will be relevant for you. Great. We'll leave the poll open for another 20 seconds. Meanwhile, I'll see we've received a question. Right. One question related to our compliance. So we will just cover this at the end. The short answer is no, there is no compliance issue. So the question is about physical defacement. We will come to this in detail at the end. Cool. Back to the webinar. Uh, yeah, please go back to the previous slide. Yeah. So recently we spoke to a bank. They told us our DALs are physical. They said our loan agreements are fully digital, like we're moving to e-sign based process. But unfortunately, we can't do it for our DALs. Why? They said it's because their DAL required a revenue stamp. Legal told them your DAL requires a revenue stamp. And legal is correct here. A DAL nature of document it is requires a 1 rupee revenue stamp. So they said that we have no choice. Like we have to physically print it and affix the revenue stamp. So there's no way for us to digitize this use case. Thankfully for this as well, it no longer needs to be this way. At Leegality, we are helping companies solve this with India's first digital revenue stamp flow. So if you have a DPN or a DAL that uses a revenue stamp, you don't need that leg to be physical. You can simply use our digital revenue stamping module, which we'll show you in the demo, and you can have even your revenue stamp documents happen by a completely paperless e-sign based process. So we'll move on to the demo now. Covered the 5 pillars. If you couldn't catch all of it, one, we'll share the recording with you, but two, we've also consolidated this into a checklist, right? Everything I've covered into an easy to understand checklist. So if you're doing physical stamping, a lot of you are doing physical stamping and you want to switch to e-stamping, you will no doubt be evaluating various systems. Use this checklist to evaluate them rigorously. It covers all aspects: operational, financial, uh, and most importantly, of course, compliance. If you're already doing e-stamping, I think people doing e-stamping slightly edged the people doing physical stamping in the poll. Use this checklist to do an audit of your current process, right? It's never too late to fix things in your current process if there are any gaps. We will share this deck by Monday end of day in the email that you registered for this webinar. You will get this checklist along with the deck. It will be in the deck. You can use this checklist. Take this checklist and use it to either audit your existing process or when you're evaluating to switch from physical to digital to evaluate the vendors that you're evaluating. With that out of the way, I'll hand it over to Shubhesh. Enough theory. Let's look at how some of the principles I talked about are actually being implemented by us in the product itself. So I'll hand it over to Shubhesh. Shubhesh, over to you for the demo.
Lord Aditya. Hey, hi, welcome to our webinar, everyone. First of all, is my screen visible?
Yes.
Okay. So what I'm going to show you is, firstly, there will be two parts of this demo. First, how the customer is going to, engage with the stamp that you'll be sending to them, or rather the agreement you'll be sending to them. That would be e-stamped. I'll show you how it would look to them, how they can e-sign, and then I'll show you how to set it up within Leegality. So I've already created a agreement and sent a invite for that to me on WhatsApp. I'll click on this. And the customer who's signing this document, they'll see the e-stamp first thing, or at the top of the document. It will have a valid serial number. It will be defaced with a unique ID. This stamp serial number and this unique ID will make sure that this particular stamp will not be reused for any other agreement. And even in the physical copy of the stamp that you'll get, you'll find the same serial number and unique
Yeah. So actually, we received one question about physical
label.
defacement.
And on each page of the document, you'll find the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Sorry,
on
we
each page
received,
of the document, you'll find.
Shubhesh, 1 second. Just go back to the legend. Yeah. So we received one question about some organization, like an organization doing physical procurement and scanning after defacing physically. They asked if there's any issue with that. So the answer is no. So as long as your legend on the physical stamp paper, that defacement is a unique legend, right? The purpose of this legend here, for example, we print a unique ID on it to ensure that that unique ID ties to the agreement, right? So that unique ID there NN ties to the agreement, which means that that stamp paper cannot be used for any other agreement, right? It's tied together. So it's known that okay, this stamp paper is being used for this agreement. So as long as your physical to digital process ensures this, you're in the clear, right? So there's no issue with physical to digital. You have to deface, you're defacing, which is great. Just ensure your process ensure like that your process ensures that there is a certain uniqueness to the stamp paper, and that uniqueness ties to the agreement it is stamping as well.
Shall I proceed?
Yes.
Great. And let's say if it's a DPN or a DAL and you want to do revenue stamping as well. Similarly, we also provide digital revenue stamps, which I'll also show you how to enable. The customer will see it this way. They'll see the revenue stamp on the paper. And if you see the legend for this, it's printed half across this revenue stamp with the unique ID very clearly visible there. This also ensures that a revenue stamp can't be used, like a single revenue stamp can't be used on multiple agreements. And for each agreement where you need a revenue stamp, you have a unique different revenue stamp available to you. Then they'll have the agreement. They can just read through this agreement. They'll proceed. They can do either Aadhaar e-sign or whatever type of e-sign. We provide 15 plus ways of doing e-sign. I'll show you how to enable relevant e-sign types for your use case in about 1 to 2 minutes. Or they can also do like virtual sign. For virtual sign, obviously they'll have to enter the OTP. So just give me 1 second. I'll enter this OTP. They can quickly scribble, give their e-sign consent, and sign the document. So now this is how your customers are going to see the e-stamp on the agreement and sign that particular agreement with the e-stamp. And once this is signed, they'll get the final copy of the agreement along with the e-stamp on it. And I'll show you how that looks. So this was my agreement. And you can see the stamp bears the signature of the customer now. And it has the same legend, same unique ID that I showed you earlier. Even this page, and on all pages where you need signature of the person, you will find the signature. So how do you set this up? For this, you'll have to go to your legality dashboard. So this is my legality dashboard. First thing you'll have to do is you'll have to set up stamp series. Stamp series is basically like, it's a way for you to configure a list of stamps, or rather it's essentially just like a series of stamp from a particular state of a particular denomination. Once you create it, it will be visible to you in your stamping panel in Leegality. And when you can also put in new orders for that particular stamp series. Let's say I want to buy more stamps for this particular series, right? It's a I can just click on purchase. It's a 100 denomination West Bengal stamp. I can enter, let's say, 100 quantities I need. I'll click on purchase, and I can add balance, pay for it using my billing profile, and that's it. Once this is done and payment is processed, all the updates about this procurement I'll be seeing in the procurement panel itself. Right now it says no active procurements because this is a testing environment and this is a testing dashboard. But in your live productions, you'll see the actual status of your procurements in this particular space. So even your revenue stamps, they will also be available to you in this panel only. So if you can see here, these are my revenue stamps, and it shows what is the status of the 100 ones that I had put. 96 of them have expired and 4 have been used or reserved. I need to add up my revenue stamps. This is a clear indication, and you can see the icon there which says need attention. Once this is done,
So
you can
this just stepping in here, what Shubhesh showed you is actually you could say the sixth pillar, which is essentially think about it this way for the people doing physical stamping. Your stamping is probably decentralized right now, or centralized and decentralized, where each branch is managing their own stamp paper. There's a logistics process involved there across each branch. Even if it's centralized, as a massive logistics process to procure and then disperse it to branches. That entire logistics process that you currently do, if you switch to e-stamping, can completely be replaced by a centralized dashboard, where you get real time, like granular visibility on how many stamps you have, what stamps are being used, what stamps are under procurement, right? So think about all the logistics process involved in your physical stamping procurement right now. Um, it just goes away and it gets replaced by this centralized dashboard. Yeah, Shubhash, go ahead.
Cool. Next thing would be using these stamps on documents. So you have for this, you can create workflows. In a workflow, you just let's say test demo e-stamping. You just name the workflow, then you select whatever agreement you want to execute. Let's say I want to execute a loan agreement. I want to execute a loan agreement. I'll select the template for it, or you can even pass a PDF of the agreement if you have a system that is generating fully filled PDFs. Once this is done, you can select what kind of stamping you want. You can also choose NeSL stamping, and it's like literally as simple as just toggling this on, and this particular workflow will run on NeSL. Or you can use our stamp series and select all the stamps that you've already procured or rather created series of via Leegality. Let's say I'll pick for Haryana. Then you can also upload your own scanned version of the stamp if you want. And even for revenue stamps, you just need to toggle this on, select the stamp series and number of revenue stamps you want. Okay, I'll just select this again. Once this is done, you just click on next. You'll see the agreement, you'll see what details you need in this agreement. To click on next, you configure the signers. You can select from one of these 15 plus ways of signing. The list doesn't feel 15, but for each, like for Aadhaar, if you'll see, there are 4 different types of e-signs available. Similarly, for virtual, there will be 4 different kinds of e-signs available. So overall, you have the option of 15 plus types of e-signs available, which you can enable or disable based on your use case. If you want to offer the agreement and the e-signing interface in a vernacular language, you can do that also. Or let's say you want to enable security feature, you want to capture face, GPS, or verify the Aadhaar with the customer is going to do Aadhaar resign. Basically, it's up to you, right? How you want to set up this journey. You can activate WhatsApp, SMS, email, wherever you want to execute this document. Point being, it's up to you how you want to configure it. Let's say this is my basic setting and I'm happy and satisfied with this. I'll click on next. So this is my agreement. This is how it's going to look, agreement and the stamp. And I can place the coordinates of where I want the e-sign to be as per my preferences or requirements. So I just dropped it from here to here and I just clicked on this all. So you'll see it's available in the same location on all pages. I'm satisfied with this. I'll click on save. My workflow is ready. So now every time,
Just one question I want to address that's relevant to the step you just showed that we have in Q&A. So someone asked that we do this physical to digital process through Leegality, in fact. Is it essential to, so the question is it essential to have the stamp paper signed to be compliant? Should you create the placeholder that Shubhash showed in the stamp paper also? The short answer is no. The stamp paper does not mandatorily need to be signed because the uniqueness of the stamp paper is via the unique ID that correlates to the agreement. Two, in an e-sign process, the placeholders are honestly for human consumption, they're cosmetic. The actual e-sign is actually envelopes the entire document. So if you look at the stamp paper page as well on a PDF reader, it will literally be part of the same document with the same e-sign on it, right? So that document is the stamp paper is signed. You don't need the placeholder on it. Three, there is ultimately nothing in law to say you need the sign. You just need to ensure that that stamp paper correlates to the document in some way. So the short answer is you don't need to create placeholders in your stamp, but you can if you wish in the method that Shubhair showed.
yeah, just want to show like this entire document. This certificate is valid for this entire document, not this page or this particular location. Yeah.
Great. One more question, Shubhash, before you stop sharing screen, which I want to you like answer using the dashboard, is do we need to maintain physical revenue stamps also? So Shubhash, if you can show that document with the revenue stamp or any the document with the stamp as well. Yes. So what we do is we paste the revenue stamp on a document and give that document a unique ID, right? to ensure that, look, this revenue stamp is not the same revenue stamp you're using again and again and again for like 1,000 digital agreements, to ensure that it's a unique revenue stamp. And we'll send you this physically as well, right? Because we do a physical to digital process. We will send you this physically, because ultimately, if in the case of an audit, in the case of enforcement, you need to show that this was revenue stamped, you need to be able to show a unique revenue stamp. We share this one page physically with you, this unique revenue stamp page. We share it physically with you. Short answer is yes, you need to maintain the physical revenue stamp. Now, how do you do that when the document is digital? With this unique revenue stamp page that we digitally affix in the document and share with you physically as well, with a unique ID that you can use to inventorize the document.
Great. Then just one last thing. So once your stamps are procured, your workflow is configured, all your agents or your RMs or whoever is executing this document from the company side, they'll just have to click on this run workflow. Everything for them would be selected. They'll have this revenue stamp, this stamp series selected. They'll click on next. They'll just enter data that this particular template requires. It says no active series found because when I showed you the stamp panel, revenue stamps were 0 and Get had enabled it here. So that's why it's not proceeding. But once your procurement is done, it's going to work perfectly and your customers are going to see the e-sign link document and will be able to e-sign that particular e-stamp document with ease, just like this particular document.
And yes,
Sorry, we lost you, Aditya.
I lost my internet connection. Yeah, sorry. The envelope concept applies for Aadhaar e-sign as well. We showed you virtual sign for the demo, but it applies to Aadhaar e-sign as well. Great. We have some questions in the Q&A box. Before that, just wanted to a few closing points. One is this checklist, right? That what we showed you covers all requirements that we talked about in this webinar. We'll give you this checklist so you can also, if you are using Leegality, you can do your own evaluation and check the veracity of this. We've also put up a poll if you would like a one-on-one demo of Leegality Bharat Stamp. A lot of you are Leegality customers, so I assume you won't want one. But in any case, those of you who are not, if you would be interested in demo, do answer the poll. If you do answer the poll, yes, we will contact you and fix up the demo. If you don't answer the poll or if you answer no, we will obviously not contact you, except for the webinar recording that we'll send you on Monday. Great. Let's come to some questions now. Actually, before that, if you want to stay up to date with like Leegality and our product updates, just a quick 1 minute thing. We of course do both Bharat Stamp, our in-house system, as well as NeSL. So if you're interested in either, both are possible. Second, a lot of you may be concerned with the DPDP Act. We have just launched our new DPDP compliance platform, Consentin, allowing you to be 100% compliant with the DPDP Act across all customer touchpoints. You can scan this if you want a demo of Consentin, or if any team, your privacy teams at your organizations are interested. And finally, if you're interested in just keeping up to date with events like this, oh, sorry, before that, we are also coming up with, we've also launched a new playbook on solving for real world on ground e-sign failures, right? 8 gaps that we've seen in our implementations and break the flow on the ground and how to fix them. We will be sharing this as well with the recording. And finally, if you want early access to resources like this and early access to invites for webinars like this, you can sign up for our weekly updates facility either via WhatsApp or email. Simply scan the QR code to sign up. We will just touch your inbox once a week at max. Sometimes we go 2 weeks also without sending a message. We will only send you relevant messages, right? Either relevant regulatory updates, latest product updates, or case studies. With that out of the way, let's come to questions. We've received about 8 questions. So let's take them one by one. So the first question is, if we procure stamps from other platforms, they've named 3 platforms. I won't name them here. they provide a receipt, right? So the question is, these platforms that they're using, they provide a receipt instead of the stamp paper, which looks nothing like the original stamp paper. The question is it valid? The short answer is no, it's not valid. So if we can go back to that slide, if we can go back to the checklist, actually, like this compliance checklist, yeah, above. If you see the IT Act requirement, and if you see the fourth requirement, the fourth stamp law requirement, right, you cannot do it. The Stamp Act clearly says you have to use stamp paper. It does not provide for private players providing their own receipts as the stamp paper. And the IT Act as well says that if you are digitizing a document that is originally physical in nature, which is the case with most stamp paper, unless you're using an ESL, then that physical copy has to correspond with the digital copy, which a stamp receipt doesn't do. The second question is a product question related to legality. Can we do real-time procurement of stamps? Because the dashboard we showed, as the question correctly identifies, has pre-procured stamps, right? So the answer is, if you're a lender, you can do real-time procurement of stamps if you use our NeSL suite. Then you can get on-the-fly generation. Without our NeSL suite, you will have to use the pre-procured method. There is a third option which might happen in the future, which is where Leegality directly also has licenses. But I'll be a bit legal about this, and I won't confirm or deny that we are working on this. You can make of that what you will. But yes, as of now, you can use NeSL or you can use our pre-procured system. But our pre-procured system is used by the bulk of our customers, and like they are facing no issues. It's the first month where you have to kind of do that planning. After that first month of use, it's kind of smooth after that. Other question is, does Leegality provide our Bharat Stamp solution, digital eStamp for Maharashtra, MP, and Telangana? So if the question is about the stamp paper being an eStamp itself, which is that SHCL generated stamp, which is like digitally generated and then physically printed, no, there are no eStamps in Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, and Telangana, unless you use any our NeSL suite. However, we do procure impressed stamp paper and we do digitize that so that you can use that digitally. So if the question was, do you specifically have the form of stamp paper in the form of an eStamp? The answer is no, unless you use NeSL. If the question was, can I do legally compliant stamping digitally via Maharashtra, MP, and Telangana via Legality's in-house system? The answer is yes. It's just that the form of the stamp paper won't be an e-stamp. It will be an impressed physical stamp that we digitize as per the IT Act and Stamp Act. Again, we will also send written answers to a lot of these questions as well with the email that we send on Monday. So in case you missed an answer, don't worry. We will send detailed written answers as well. The other question is, for Legality's e-sign and stamp solution, is consent in, which is our DPDP compliance platform, required for Aadhaar e-sign? The answer is no. Aadhaar e-sign can be done separately. It's delinked from consent. However, whenever you collect customer data under the DPDP Act, at any point in time where you collect customer data, you need to have a consent. So this consent is there at any data collection step that you currently have. You need to have a DPDP consent collection at that stage. So consent in solves for that. It's not linked to Aadhaar e-sign, although in many flows, they will probably be step 1 and 2. There'll be concurrent steps, or there'll be, consecutive steps maybe, but they're not linked in any way. Yeah. So other question is, stamp papers are sent by platforms post digital execution of the agreements almost after 6 months. In what can be done in these cases? So two parts to this. Can the stamp paper be sent after the execution of the agreement? Yes, because any process that does physical to digital, like scanning, and physical to digital conversion, by definition, the physical stamp paper can only be sent after that digitization is complete, right? So it will be after. That being said, 6 months is too long. You should tell them to cut it down. Like 6 months is a lot of time for the stamp paper to spend in the custody of your vendor who is not actually the owner of the stamp paper. It's like there's no law on this, but 6 months is way too long. I mean, what can be done about this? The diplomatic answer is ask them to cut it down. The non-diplomatic answer is switch to legality. We'll send it to you in less than a month. Another question is, can we go for Bharat stamps of legality instead of SHCL, which is private stamps instead of SHCL? So the question, like, I'll just unpack the question. It's incorrect to say that Bharat stamps of legality are private stamps. Bharat stamp is a service by which we procure stamps from authorized stamp vendors. And in most states, they are SHCIL stamps that we procure. And we just put them through a process of digitization in line with what the Stamp Act and the IT Act require. Right. So we do not, currently, we are not authorized right now, as on date, we do not produce our own stamp papers, right? We procure them physically from various vendors. And in most states, the ultimate generator of the stamp paper is still SHCIL. It's just that we take those SHCIL stamps, which are there in physical form, and we digitize them in line with the IT Act and Stamp Act. So you can use Bharat stamp by legality, but it's incorrect to say that you'll be using them instead of SHCIL. Because if a state is using SHCIL, then if you're using Bharat stamp, it will be an SHCIL stamp that is being digitally affixed. We are just doing the physical to digital conversion process and the procurement process for you. Yeah. Another question is, how are stamps procured by legality? How do we ensure that there'll be no SLA breach or longer TAT? Do we have our own operations team, or is it by third-party vendors? The answer is, on the first one, how are stamps procured? Happy to like discuss this in detail with you offline. But top level, yes, we have our own operations team, and that operations team does work with third-party vendors as well. But we have our own dedicated operations team sitting out of Gurgaon. How do you ensure there's no SLA breach or longer TAT? Well, we bake that into the SLA, and then you hold us to account based on the SLA. That's the only way. But happy to connect offline to discuss this in more detail, what apprehensions and concerns you have, and happy to share with you how we solve for those concerns. There's one question, I think is a follow-up, which just says yes. Final question, is it okay? Actually, I think there's a few more in chat, but final question in Q&A box. Is it okay if the physical stamp paper has the name of the second party instead of the first party? Yeah, we can also stop sharing the screen. Is it okay if the physical stamp paper has the name of second party instead of first party? To be honest, in our view, it needs the first party's name. Like, there is a view that, okay, you need any party's name, you just need a party's name. But in our view, it needs the first party's name. And I think if you see Stamp Act, Stamp rules, and if you see Stamp practice, first party name is always there. Second party name is sometimes and in many cases not there. However, I would run this by your compliance team. Our view is that you need the first party name and not the second party name. Like, first party name is mandatory, second party name is optional. Not that you can't have the second party name, it's optional. Whether you can only have the second party name and not the first party, in our view, that is not permissible. But I would get this checked with your compliance and legal teams. Let's see. Few more questions in chat, so I'll just quickly go through them as well. Okay, one is the same. In how many days are the original stamp papers sent? So the question is, how many days are the original stamp papers after legality digitizes? How many days is it sent? So the digitization process from when you place the order to when it's available in your dashboard is 7 to 10 working days. On the 7th or 10th working day, we instantly courier it, and the courier is out. So it's however long that courier takes, which is probably could be anywhere from 1 working day to 3 or 4 working days from there. So that's how long it takes from legality. So you could say that from the day to place your order, within 2 weeks, you will have the physical stamps with you. And the digital will be obviously available in your dashboard much earlier. Another question is like, what's the convenience charge that we charge to procure stamps? We'll reach out to you offline and tell you our rates. It depends on volume. So It's largely volume dependent, so it'll depend on how much your volume is.
Aditya, there's
And
a
one question on demo, please give a demo on document e-sign fraud prevention. We are happy to give that demo. If anyone
actually
has any more questions on stamping, we'll answer those first. Then we'll stay back and give the demo on e-sign fraud prevention.
actually I have it ready, so I can, while others are giving.
Perfect. So do drop your questions in. In about 3 minutes, I'll pick up questions again. Meanwhile, Shubhesh will show how e-sign fraud prevention works.
Okay, so what I've done while Aditya was answering queries is I've created a document. In this I've enabled a bunch of security features that we offer. First, I've enabled an Aadhaar e-sign verify. What it's going to do is it's going to check whether the Aadhaar which was used to apply for, let's say, a loan is the same one which is being used for Aadhaar e-sign of the loan agreement. Second thing I've added is I've enabled a liveliness check. So it's going to, when I'm signing, it's going to check whether a real person is sitting in front of the agreement on the screen and e-signing that agreement or not. It will ensure, malpractices where agent would, let's say, during photo capture, put up a photo in front of the camera of the customer and then proceed. And next, what would happen is it would match the face capture that I'm going to do with the photo that I had captured during KYC or during a previous application stage. And then lastly, it's going to check my GPS location. If your customers are coming to the branch, you can also geofence it. But since this is a remote use case, I'm just doing a simple GPS capture. So this is my agreement. First thing it's going to do is it's going to capture my location. Then it's going to tell me that face capture is going to happen. It's going to tell me what's going to happen. And in with a single capture, both the tests are going to happen in one go: face match plus liveliness. So if you'll see, it's giving me some instructions for liveliness, and it successfully verified that I was a real person because I followed the instructions it gave me on the screen, and it then matched the face to the photo I had uploaded while I was creating this particular document. If you have an API flow, you won't have to do anything; it will all automatically happen. You won't have to upload photos of the signer. Then you proceed. So if you'll see, the name on the application is Shubhesh, and this could be any name. Let's say it was Aditya who was the customer, and I've gotten hands on this particular document with Aditya's name, and let's say I attempt to e-sign this particular document using my Aadhaar. So what would happen? I just enter my Aadhaar details. So just give me 1 second. I'll request for an OTP. Looks good so far, right? Like it's gonna work. Scammer would feel very happy. They'll click on verify OTP, and as soon as they do, the system is going to reject the resign because the certificate details that were generated by the ESP did not match the Aadhaar details that were expected by the system, and your document is going to stay unsigned. So if I just, this is the page of the details page of the document where we see all the updates. So you'll see it's expired because the verification failed. So yeah, we can set up a more detailed demo of these features for you if you want in a one-on-one conversation.
Thanks, Shubhesh. We have one hand raised giving you mic access. You have mic access, so you can unmute and ask your question. Yeah, Abhiraj, we've given you mic access, so you can unmute and ask if you have a question. Otherwise, you can, if you don't have a question, it was accidental press, you can just put that hand down and okay. Great. So thank you so much for attending. Hope the webinar was useful. Hope you learned something. Hope you have something to take away back to your organizations. We will again send you the recording on Monday. Do reply to that with feedback you have about this webinar, what topics you'd like to see in future webinars. Actually, while we have some of you still here, do drop what topics you would like to see from our next webinar. We run these every week. We will resume them in April and we'll do weekly webinars. So do drop in the chat like what topics you'd like to see. We also, yeah, and we will share that. We have one question. We will share the deck with the recording. But yeah, do drop any topics you'd like to see. Do you want us to deep dive into any specific area of stamping, any specific area of e-sign, any other area related to paperless processes, any area related to the DPDP Act? We will be doing more webinars starting from next quarter. Thank you so much for attending. And yeah, we will send you the email with the deck, the recording, as well as answers to the questions we answered today on Monday. You can reply to that if you would be interested in talking to us further. You can reply to that if you have any feedback. You can also reach out to us at leegality.com, www.leegality.com. And if you want to see our DPDP platform, you can go to consent.in. And Shubhash has also dropped our email IDs in chat. One final question, actually, just before someone has just put this in, how do you identify the amount you pay for stamp duty? This has to be done by your legal team. We do not take judgment calls on how much you need to pay for a document. That being said, we are soon launching a stamp duty calculator. More details on that soon. And in April, we hope to do a webinar on that. So do stay tuned.